mop, that's a stick. 33 shots in a Glock, that's a dick. 50 round drum, call that bitch 50 cent. 100 round drum on the Drake, it's a hit. Shit ain't no question, you play, you get hit. Pull up and let the bitch spray to that sick. Then I go pray, ask the savior for strength. I'm in creator, the savior, I'm him. Shout out the gates, we break winners like him. I told my son I'ma get us a M. I'ma keep grinding, I do it for them. No DJ Khaled, but I'm trying to win. Stand on that business, yeah, I get it in. They second line behind you and your kin. Riding that farm, you know that it's tenant. I got 100, my bro got the fish. Born in the slums, I was raised in the trenches. It be your nigga turn state as a witness.
In 2013, Nikko Jenkins pleaded with anyone who would listen, from prosecutors to judges, to keep him locked up. He complained corrections staff during his 10 years in prison, starting as a teen for carjacking, never addressed his mental health. He said he feared he would kill if he was let out. He did. 4 people shot dead in 10 days in Omaha. Several Jenkins family members went to prison for helping him. Now that Nikko Jenkins has asked the courts to stop the appeals and execute him, attorneys tell First Alert 6 Investigates that's not so simple. For one, because it's a death penalty case, the system has built-in guardrails to make sure every appeal is exhausted. In fact, his attorneys asked a local judge last fall to earmark $50,000 to study his mental health, all the way back to when he was a kid. Secondly, Nebraska doesn't have a way to really carry out a death sentence. While the state's method is lethal injection, corrections has trouble getting the drugs to carry it out because the drug makers of the assigned cocktail don't want their products associated with executions.
Just over 2 weeks before he was released from prison, Nikko Jenkins sent a rambling, almost illegible letter to Douglas County District Court Judge Gary Randall. Here's the letter. Jenkins wrote it in a diamond pattern, then filled all 4 corners as well. The cursive writing connects one word to the next. It's difficult to determine where it starts and ends, and almost impossible to understand what it means. The letter includes repeated references to chemistry of the mind and body, biochemicals, formulas, and activity of the brain and pituitary glands. The letter references surgically implanted devices molded to the exact size of vital organs and electromagnetic conductors and energy. Jenkins continues his message on the envelope referencing Goddess of Queens, his intellect's brilliance, and annoying the alphas of elites attacking the Pharaoh King. Jenkins was released from prison 2.5 weeks later, and just a few weeks after that, investigators were on his trail again, arresting him Thursday night inside the Tudor Heights apartments for terroristic threats. Authorities searched the apartment where he was found and seized 2 guns. Sources say that evidence may be connected to unsolved homicides, including that of Andrea Kruger. Jenkins went before a judge for the first time Tuesday. Prosecutors say last Monday he threatened to kill a woman and her family. The woman called police and a terroristic threats warrant was issued. Prosecutors say after that, Nikko's mother Lori and one of his sisters got involved. Melanie Jenkins reportedly called the victim, telling her to go to OPD headquarters and drop the case against Nikko or someone would hurt her or her family. Prosecutors say Melanie Jenkins also told the woman the people who ride and die with Nikko would come after her. Nikko told the judge it was, quote, nothing more than a relationship quarrel between 2 lovers.
The confession of Nikko Jenkins began at 7:24 p.m. on September 3rd at Omaha Police Headquarters.
This is going to be a long night.
Indeed, it didn't end until the next morning. From a Douglas County Sheriff's investigators to homicide detectives, Nikko Jenkins spent more than 9 hours in the box.
And I'm going to give you from A to Z. This is not no goose chase. This is the real deal right here.
But it was a goose chase, at least in the beginning. He began by telling investigators that 2 brothers murdered Andrea Kruger at 168th and Fort.
They were looking to idolize me and come back with a trophy. It's a trophy killing.
He claimed they were first-time killers and made mistakes.
So they're going to do stupid things like keep the windows rolled up while you're trying to burn the car. Fire has to breathe. You see what I'm saying?
The scenario did happen. Andrea Kruger's SUV was dumped in North Omaha, but investigators say it was Nikko Jenkins' uncle, Warren Levering, who did it. Slowly, detectives got to the truth.
Let me tell him, Nikko, what happened?
The hours that passed were now missing the bravado.
Now, she was targeted. I will say that much.
Eventually, Jenkins, in a whisper,
That's what you
began to admit his role in the murders. It is hard to hear from the interview room. Detectives knew what was going on, though. He then wanted to make sure his grievances about the Department of Corrections were heard.
I just gave y'all 4 things. A lot of you said you wanted to closure.
Jenkins was in court again this morning. You can see him right here. He told the judge during the sentencing process he wants to represent himself without a lawyer. Jenkins faces a possible death sentence after pleading no contest to 4 counts of first-degree murder. The judge says he will not let Jenkins make that decision until his next court appearance on March 2nd. Douglas County Attorney Don Klein says the point of today's hearing is to make clear that Jenkins understands the consequences of proceeding without an attorney.
The judge wanted to make sure that we had a record made, that it's out there, that anybody that looks at this knows that he's advised the defendant of what the process is and that he understands it.
It's pretty clear Jenkins is positioning himself to appeal. He says he's prepared to go to death row. He intends to go to death row. But he says once the Department of Justice finds out about the violation of his rights and the misconduct of law enforcement officers, well, he says, I won't be there long.
Into his first hearing, acting as his own attorney, accused serial killer Nikko Jenkins' first decision, allow a judge to determine his future, not a jury.
Inside the courtroom, it seemed like Nikko Jenkins ran the show.
Soviet resurrection. Russia, get together.
Yelling something about a socialist revolution at our cameras, and during his hearing, yelling over Judge Peter Battalion, quote, "Let me talk, Your Honor, you're violating my human rights." Even calling Judge Battalion prejudiced, the same judge that'll oversee his trial in the absence of a jury. But right out of the gate, Jenkins made an objection. Battalion asking to what? Jenkins says he filed 2 motions, one saying his Miranda rights were violated after being arrested for 4 murders last summer. The other against Douglas County Attorney Don Klein. But Battalion says those motions were filed improperly.
Partly is because I'm sure the defendant doesn't understand procedural issues or questions, so we'll get through it.
Don Klein also says they'll have a separate hearing for those motions.
So we have a motion to suppress, and then we'll have I assume at that date we'll get a trial date.
But that didn't stop Jenkins from bringing it up repeatedly. At one point, Jenkins looking over at Klein and grinning. Judge Battalion scolded him, saying, quote, "You only need to look up here. You don't need to make faces." Jenkins saying, "I only smiled." Battalion arguing back, well, smiling is a face.
It's a little bit a different situation, obviously, when you have somebody pro se, and I think the judge is doing a fine job just handling it.
Nikko Jenkins appeared in court on a video screen, broadcast from his home at the Tecumseh State Correctional Institute. District Court Judge Peter Battalion asked Jenkins if he wanted to withdraw his motion and continue with his appeals.
You want to withdraw it, is that correct?
Judge Battalion said the whole purpose of the hearing was to determine whether the court should accept Mr. Jenkins' motion.
And so since he does not want to dismiss that, I'll proceed accordingly as to the state's motion to dismiss, and I'll make a decision on that.
Earlier, Judge Battalion asked Jenkins if he understands what's going on today.
Do you believe you're competent to make appropriate and rational decisions today?
Jenkins' attorney asked the judge for funds to have him mentally evaluated again. Judge Battalion decided to take Jenkins' motion that would allow the appeals to continue under advisement, but denied his attorney's motion for funding for further mental evaluation.
At this time, I do not feel that it is necessary that Mr. Jenkins be mentally evaluated or psychologically evaluated for that motion that I have under advisement.
By all accounts, Nikko is profoundly mentally ill. Our concern with allowing this motion to be heard was that it would not be in his best interest to discontinue this action, and I'm very happy to have learned with everybody else that Nikko no longer wants to end this process, that he wants to continue to fight.
He has mental health issues. The question was he so mentally ill that he didn't understand what was going on, which we don't think he is. And the other one part was, did he know and understand what he was doing at the time he did it, which we believe he did.
In Omaha, I'm John Chapman, First Alert 6.
The Department of Corrections under fire again. An injury behind bars is raising questions.
Family members and state senators want to know why officials can't put a stop to it.
That should have never happened.
and it was very disturbing to hear.
Sophia Jenkins, Nikko's older sister, says when she tried to visit her brother in Lincoln on Sunday, she couldn't, and couldn't believe why. She tells KMTV exclusively that her brother was strapped to a bed by corrections staff when he grabbed a set of 7 handcuff keys and swallowed them.
It really did. It was disturbing. It was heartbreaking, and it was unbelievable. Like, I couldn't even imagine it. Like, really? He swallowed some keys, and then let alone 7 keys.
NDCS says staff tended to him and he didn't need to go to the hospital. But on at least 10 occasions in the last year, Jenkins has harmed himself by cutting his face and tongue and mutilating his genitals with razors and other objects. One item he used to cut his penis was a guard's badge.
Because it touches something deep down inside.
Senator Ernie Chambers says prison director Scott Frakes should resign because an inmate with mental illness shouldn't continuously be able to get materials that belong to guards to hurt himself.
When it happens this many times, it establishes a pattern, and any competent director of a department would never let it happen.
What can happen to an individual?
Senator Chambers and Senator Bob Christ are part of the Judiciary Committee that investigated his case. Christ says no one should be segregated like Jenkins was for years, and 35 to 40% of prison inmates have mental, behavioral, or addiction problems.
We have to solve the equation to have a brick-and-mortar facility and psychiatric and psychological staff available to deal with these mental, behavioral health and addiction problems.
Sophia wants to know why someone like Jenkins isn't at a mental hospital when they clearly need it, and it's previously been ordered.
For his illness, he needs to be in a hospital, and he needs to be treated for his mental illness and not in 23-hour confinement.
When an individual who has been found to have mental problems of various kinds continues to engage in self-mutilation, I think it is criminal conduct, and there ought to be an investigation by the county attorney or grand jury, but that's not going to happen.
This is Nikko Jenkins when he was first booked for murder in September 2013. These exclusive photos show what he looks like now. More than once, Jenkins has gotten a razor blade that the prison says didn't come from his shaving equipment and mutilated himself. Jenkins says he has 9 lacerations to his face, tried to carve Satan into his forehead, and split his tongue. Today, Douglas County District Court Judge Peter Battalion asked the acting warden at the state pen, Robert Madsen, how he's getting the razors. The warden said he doesn't know how, and he couldn't guarantee it won't happen again.
That's always been a concern as to how do you handle somebody like him, and he keeps doing things to himself, and that's the problem. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's as the judge said to him at the end of the hearing, don't cut yourself anymore.
Madsen explained Jenkins is in a 23-hour confinement cell, doesn't interact with other inmates, a staff member checks on him every 15 minutes, and now has a camera in his cell. The judge questioned whether he was getting them in his food, which other inmates deliver. Quote, someone that works in the cafeteria could put a razor blade in the mashed potatoes and the staff may not see it. The warden didn't know if Jenkins was taking any meds. His attorney has long asked for him to get mental health treatment for bipolar and schizoaffective disorder.
Our position is he should be in the regional center. That's where that's where he should be. That's not going to happen, obviously.
Jenkins says he cuts himself to expose the hatred of the Nebraska Department of Corrections and wants to be moved to the Lancaster County Jail. Klein says he doesn't get that choice no matter what he does.
He's been attempting by whatever means to manipulate the system from the very beginning of this case, and that's just his nature.
Evil. There's a difference between mental and evil, and this here is evil.
Curtis Bradford's mother, Valita Glasgow, says no matter what it is, no matter how long it takes, she'll be in the same courtroom as Nikko Jenkins. The spree killer is convicted of murdering her son and 3 others in a 10-day span that terrorized Omaha.
It's very, very, very hard to sit that close to him, but I'm going to do it. I don't care how hard it is.
Today, the competency hearing for Jenkins, who's been housed at the Lincoln Correctional Center and State Pen since August 2014, most of the time in solitary confinement. Jenkins has since mutilated his face, tongue, and penis and attempted to hang himself at least twice. He also swallowed a set of keys. The defense's psychiatrist, Dr. Bruce Gutnick, testified Jenkins still suffers from mental illness and that these incidents emphasize that. Dr. Jennifer Simplebon, a psychologist for the Lincoln Regional Center, said Jenkins was faking mental illness. She testified he was doing these acts to get what he wants, like a radio, TV, or different housing. Glasgow says it's upsetting because her son doesn't have a choice.
I don't feel like he has the right to say where he wants to be housed, because my baby is housed on top of my mantle in an urn. How does he get to say how he's housed?
He's not pretending to be crazy. He's real life crazy.
Shalonda Jenkins says in the 5 years she's known her husband Nikko, he's suffered a plethora of mental illness and claims to be controlled by an Egyptian god, Apophis.
Nikko specifically told me that Apophis gives him orders.
Nikko told her Apophis saved him from attempting suicide in solitary confinement a few years ago.
It was this voice that came and was just like, if you do what I tell you to do, if you follow my demands, then I'll make sure you're safe and make sure you're okay.
Nikko claims to have heard these voices since he was a child, and it continued through his teenage and adult years. And prior to his July release from prison, Nikko asked for mental help. His wife did too.
I told them not to let him out. I said he's not ready to come out in society.
But Nikko's wife says the system failed him by not giving him that treatment. Weeks later, prosecutors say he went on a killing spree, murdering 4 people.
I feel sorry for the victims. I feel sorry for all 4 of them. I feel sorry for people who got hurt by Nikko.
Now Nikko awaits another mental evaluation to determine if he's even competent to stand trial. Right now, he's not. Shalonda just hopes someone will finally help him.
Whatever happens in the justice system happens, but at the same time, I just want my husband to get help. Whether if he has to go to death row or whether he has to do life without parole or whatever. I just want my husband to get the mental help that he needs.
Putting someone in prison simply to say you have to serve your time, and then once you've served your time you've paid your debts to society, be gone. Well, all we're doing is making the public less safe.
His decision took years to reach after the 10-day killing spree in 2013, just after Jenkins released from prison. All started on August 11th when Jenkins shot and killed 26-year-old Juan Uribe Peña and 29-year-old Jorge Cajiga Ruiz inside a pickup truck near 18th and F. 7 days later, Jenkins runs into Curtis Bradford at a party. Now, the next morning, August 19th, a neighbor finds the 22-year-old shot in the head near 18th and Clark. 3 days later, Jenkins targeted a young mother on her way home from work. Authorities find 33-year-old Andrea Kruger's body in the road at 168th and Fort.
Now, Jenkins pled guilty to all 4 crimes April 16th, 2014, saying he doesn't remember committing them and that he didn't want to go to trial. It has taken another 3 years to finish the sentencing phase of the trial. Many of the delays caused by questions about Jenkins' mental health. In late November of last year, the 3-judge panel found 6 aggravating factors in this case, leading to today's death penalty decision.
Days ago, Nikko Jenkins' attorneys filed a motion in Douglas County District Court urging the judge to move quickly on their request. They argue their client's mental health is going downhill dramatically, that Jenkins cut his own neck open to remove what he believed was a tumor, and that they need the court to authorize $50,000 so an experienced mitigation expert can examine Nikko Jenkins and make recommendations based on his current mental health crisis. The judge already gave the go-ahead to pay $7,000 to Advancing Real Change to begin researching Nikko Jenkins' upbringing, but the money has run out. Jenkins' mental health has been front and center for years. After all, he brought a loaded handgun to school when he was 7. Later, he told detectives it was the god Apophis who told him to kill. Once in custody, there were several examples of self-mutilation. In 2017, experts had dueling conclusions regarding his competency. The judge sided with the forensic psychologist who concluded Nikko Jenkins was faking aspects of mental illness and knows right from wrong. And that was a deciding factor to move forward with a death sentence. Mother of Andrea Kruger, who was pulled from her car and murdered by Jenkins and several of his family members in 2013, tells me, quote, "He's pure evil. There is no study, no medication, no rehabilitating, and no amount of money that can fix him. He is exactly where he belongs for the safety of every Nebraskan." The mother of Curtis Bradford, who was also murdered by Jenkins, calls him nothing but an attention seeker. She wonders why the families have to put up with this nonsense at least once a year.
Though there wasn't much love inside the courtroom as two psychiatrists testify whether Nikko Jenkins is competent to stand trial on murder charges.
Yeah, he's insane. He's a psychopath. He's both. You could be both. You could be insane and a psychopath.
But does Jenkins understand the charges against him and what happens in court? That's what a Douglas County judge must now decide. A man who prosecutors say killed Andrea Kruger, Curtis Bradford, Jorge Cajiga Ruiz, and Juan Uribe Pena in just 10 days last August.
He's in irons and locked up. He's in Mod 20. Nobody goes near him.
And Douglas County Corrections psychiatrist Dr. Eugene Alavito says no one should go near Nikko Jenkins, a man he describes as aggressive, impulsive, insane.
You wouldn't want to mess with Nikko and be on his bad list, I'll tell you right now.
But Wednesday's hearing isn't about Jenkins' sanity. It's whether he understands the charges against him that'll determine if he's competent for trial.
I mean, there's differing opinions, obviously, from the testimony, so we'll just see what the court says, and we'll deal with it no matter what.
Testimony from 3 psychiatrists. The first, Dr. Y. Scott Moore, who suggests Jenkins may be faking for secondary gain. And then Dr. Bruce Gutnick, hired by Jenkins' attorney. He diagnoses Jenkins with schizoaffective disorder, a combination of schizophrenia and personality disorders like narcissism, paranoia.
So a person can be mentally ill and still be competent.
But Nikko Jenkins' public defender Tom Riley says it can be a fine line, especially since Jenkins has repeatedly said he can't even trust his own attorneys.
When clients of ours have mental illness, that's not an uncommon situation.
But as to whether Jenkins is faking that illness, Riley says the only way to know is professional opinion.
You have to rely on the history and the, in some ways, how they react to medication.
And in court, Dr. Alavito testified that Jenkins took medication for 2 weeks at DCC and reacted, quote, wonderfully, but says Jenkins stopped when denied lunch. Assistant Douglas County Attorney Brenda Beadle calling that manipulative behavior, saying Jenkins simply has no regard for rules.
Video with an accused killer the night he's suspected of getting a gun. A judge says this man is not guilty of giving it to him.
Prosecutors said Wells gave Nikko Jenkins a 12-gauge shotgun the night Jenkins got out of prison. They believe Jenkins used it to kill 3 people.
I knew he wasn't guilty. I know my son would have done nothing like that.
A mom is relieved her son was found not guilty of giving an accused serial killer a weapon back in July of 2013. Prosecutors say this 12-gauge gun, the one Nikko Jenkins allegedly used to kill at least 3 of his 4 victims, was from Anthony Wells when they met up right after Jenkins was released from prison at the Travelodge Hotel near 72nd and Grover.
Other people may have assisted, but I knew from day one that Tony never in any kind of way would have done anything to assist Nikko or any other one to commit a crime.
Wells has denied giving Jenkins a gun from the beginning, as seen in this interview from August.
I didn't get nothing for him. I didn't get nothing for him. The only thing I gave him a cup.
Inside the courtroom, Judge Peter Battalion says Wells was seen on camera going into the motel 3 times, but he could not see in the video that Wells brought in a shotgun.
Individuals carry guns, short shotguns, all the time in their pants. That's how they're not going to bring it in and walk in the middle of a hotel with a sawed-off shotgun.
The judge says while Wells did have on a baggy shirt and pants, he walked with a normal gait. Earlier this week, Jenkins' now ex-girlfriend Sherry Floyd testified she saw Wells hand Jenkins the shotgun.
She had nothing to gain from telling the police what she saw that night and everything to lose.
Still, based on beyond reasonable doubt, the judge found Wells not guilty. But Judge Battalion did have advice for Wells, saying there are no clean hands in this case. You have 3 kids. You shouldn't be around these people. You should be at home supporting your kids.
I look at this as just another part of this ongoing inconsistent behavior that I think is due to his mental illness.
Jenkins sent the request in this handwritten note filed this week. A 3-judge panel sentenced him to death in 2017. A jury convicted him for killing 4 people in a 10-day span in August 2013. The murders began just days after serving more than 10 years in prison for 2 carjackings and assaults. While Jenkins might want an execution date, he's probably going to have to wait. Right now, he and 10 others are held on death row, and the last execution was in 2018.
Convicted killer Nikko Jenkins has been transported from jail to prison and back a number of times over the past decade. He was days away from going to a mental health hospital, but Judge Peter Battalion says the Lincoln Regional Center refuses to take him. They'll have a hearing on Thursday to figure it out.
We want to progress this case. We want to get it moving. We're anxious for this hearing on Thursday so that the regional center and the court can, I guess, come to a conclusion about how this treatment's going to take place.
The Attorney General sent the letter to the judge last week saying that security was the major concern at the hospital. Jenkins' public defender Tom Riley says this conundrum only gets more difficult since a number of alleged and convicted killers have been housed at the LRC before.
By sending a letter to the judge that says we're not following your order certainly isn't, in my opinion, the appropriate way to bring it in front of the court.
In the order, Judge Battalion said he would have appreciated the LRC coming to last week's hearing to say they wouldn't take him. Judge Battalion went off the statute that says if a person is deemed incompetent, they have to go to the state licensed medical facility. The only one is the LRC.
I think the court is being somewhat generous in giving them an opportunity to be heard, as opposed to having them present themselves in court to show cause why they shouldn't be held in contempt of court.
I don't think they weren't really a party at that time until the court entered the order, so they wouldn't normally be a part of that hearing.
Nikko Jenkins never went to trial. He eventually admitted his role in the shooting deaths of 4 people in a 10-day span more than 2 years ago to detectives. He repeated as much in a jailhouse phone call to WWT6 News months later.
I wish to plead guilty to all of these charges.
Last week, Nikko Jenkins sent me this certified letter from prison. In it, he confesses to 2 additional crimes, an attempted murder and murder. Now, over the years, Nikko Jenkins has sent me a number of letters from prison. Most of them are hard to understand. This one isn't one of them. In the letter, the spree killer outlines how he continued his shooting rampage 3 days after killing Andrea Kruger. Someone fired a number of shots at this green Chevy Caprice parked at 46th and Fort. 3 people were hit, including these 2 women, Deanna Jones and Shamika Holloway. We interviewed them 3 months after the incident, where they pointed to Nikko Jenkins as the shooter.
I just turned back to the front of the car, and I just heard gunfire, and I seen the window shatter, and that's when I ran. I thought it hit my spine because I fell, and I couldn't feel my legs.
In the letter written by Jenkins and mailed to WWT6 News days ago, he described the assault rifle with the infrared beam he aimed at the women and wrote how he wanted to confess to give closure to the victims. We showed the letter to Douglas County Attorney Don Klein.
He points out 2 different cases. One, he was already a person that was under suspicion for. The other one, we're not so sure that he is.
In light of the new information, Klein says Omaha detectives are taking another look. Attempted murder ×3 may now be added to his long list of crimes. But Jenkins isn't going anywhere. He's awaiting a 3-judge panel to decide the death penalty. The other case outlined in the letter to WWT6 News is a confession to murder. Jenkins wrote he shot a man 11 times in the chest with the same gun sometime between August 24th and 29th near 24th and Blondo. Unlike the other case, Jenkins did not offer any names. And there's this red flag. There's no evidence of a shooting in this area during the time, let alone a homicide. One shooting where the evidence lines up, and another where nothing makes sense. So what are we to make of the confessions?
He tries to mess with the system as much as he can, so who knows what his purpose.
This panel finds that the death penalty is appropriate, should be, and is hereby given for each of the 4 murders by the defendant.
4 death sentences and another 12 convictions, each with 45 to 50 years in prison. That is what the 3-panel judge ruled in the Nikko Jenkins case.
The defendant's commission of these 4 murders over a 10-day period is one of the worst killing sprees in the history of this state.
You don't get the glory today. I get the glory. My family gets the glory. God gets the glory.
The mother of victim Curtis Bradford was emotional after the verdict.
This has been too long. 4 years is a long time.
She says it's time to move on and let go of what Nikko Jenkins did to her family.
I absolutely one thing to say to him, he's had power over my life for 4 years. And I've struggled for 4 years. He don't get that power today.
Douglas County Attorney Don Klein says Jenkins is one of the most manipulative personalities they have ever seen.
In his history is a very dangerous person. And like I said, that's part of this process that the court found that he deserved the maximum punishments.
The 3 judges had to weigh his past, like his family history and mental illness, against the severity of his crimes. They also compared this case to others in the past.
Each one of these murders was a deliberate and planned act. The victims were pre-selected and the murders were purposeful.
And now it's a time for healing and for these families to maybe have some closure after 4 long years.
I'm ready to go home and heal. That's what I want to do. I'm tired, I'm weary, and I'm ready to go home.
I'm trying to get paid in full. I'm trying to get paid in full. Yeah, I'ma do it till I'm laying in the ditch. But until then, I'm getting money like Mitch. I'm trying to get paid before I be a broke nigga. Send them shoes to kick your dough, nigga. Coming straight up out, they didn't know, nigga. Chopper City cutthroat, nigga. Where I'm from, it's no joke, nigga. You can fuck around and get smoked, nigga. Big dog, yeah, I'm the goat, nigga. If you want it, I can get you broke, nigga. Shot caller, yeah, I'm big ballin'. Neck and wrist look like water. Shit, my pockets fatter than my bitch ass. She drippin' pussy like water. She a bad bitch on that bag shit, tryna stack it up for her daughter. The bitch suck the dick and then swallow the kids up every day in that order.